America's become extremely diverse. You have a lot of diversity issues like in France right now, like where
Canada too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that just a phase that we go through as places diversify, like schools of thought changing? Like, are we eroding sometimes, or are we evolving? Do you feel like that's where I sometimes wonder, like, is diversification, is it too soon in some of these places? Is it, not is it right or is it wrong, because it is what it is, but what is the byproducts of that? And because some of it seems to be kind of scary in some spots,
Yeah, I mean, and
it may be too big of a fish to fry,
Well, I mean, common unity. The problem we're facing is I think for good reasons, we've realized that we've marginalized groups of people unfairly. We've disenfranchised them. They haven't been included. They have valuable things to say. Somebody I'm recording some episodes with, Greg Thomas. He's a black man, and he's been teaching me how much jazz and the blues contributed to American culture, to American democracy. It's been really, that series is going to come out eventually.
We just went to Graceland the other day. So
and so and he talks about being an omni-American and being a radical moderate, and talking about a cultural worldview rather than a racialized worldview. And I applaud his courage, because it's difficult to make these things and make these kinds of statements. But I think what he's putting his finger on is, we have to do this thing. We have to stop hurting people just because of who they are, and I firmly agree with that. But we haven't been remember the ecology of practices. We haven't been counterbalancing that with, okay, good, let's do that. But what we need to do is we need to balance that with what are we doing to strengthen community. This is called complexification. So let me give you a biological example of this. You and I started out as a zygote, a fertilized egg. Initially, the cells just reproduce, but then they start to do something. They start to differentiate. They start to become skin cells and lung cells and hearts.
Oh, wow!
Right? Differentiation.
Do they fight a little or not?
No, well, here's the thing. But that's the thing. While they are differentiating, they are simultaneously, literally self-organizing. They're also organizing into organs. And so a living thing is simultaneously differentiating and integrating.
Right.
And when I am look at my hand is very differentiated, but it's also integrated. And when it does both of those, it complexifies. It gets emergent abilities, emergent powers. And if you only integrate, you get stultifying stillness. And if you only diversify, you get frustrating fragmentation. You need to have them properly integrated, right? So that you get complexification. I think I'm not saying we should stop pursuing the diversification that we're doing. There are good moral arguments for doing this, and there's even good cultural arguments, right? But what we actually should be pursuing is complexification of our culture, which means we should also be balancing that with, yes, but what binds us together? And simple liberal tolerance doesn't do it. It's not enough. It's thin soup. And we've lost the civic religions, we've lost the sacred religions, we've even lost a shared popular culture. And just being taught, let's just all be nice. That's not
realistic.
It's not enough.
It's not enough.
You need a shared vision. Again, I want everybody to hear what I'm saying. Pursue the diversification.
I hear it totally.
That's right. But it also needs to be counterbalanced with also pursue the integration, so that we complexify, so that we literally grow and have emergent abilities to deal with the problems that we're all collectively sharing.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, my father's from Nicaragua, but I'm mostly viewed as just a white guy, but it's been like, it definitely feels like they've made just white. A lot of times the media, it feels like, I'm not saying this is real,
right?
But it feels like, and I have friends that feel like that like white Christian men are just made to be like the enemy, and that they've never done anything good.
Demonizing people will always end up
It's
bad.
been horrible, because there's so many good people that now start to say, okay, you want to make me the enemy, then that's what I'll be. It's almost like not that's what I'll be, but then I'm going to separate myself from this society because I'm not even respected in it.
Yeah,
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes direct sense to me as a father. My son was in a program in which he would come home and he would feel dejected because he was demonized that way. And at one point he said, well, you know what? And this is the effect this had on him. I'm going to join the right because at least they'll work on my behalf and they'll stop demonizing me. And I had to sit him down. I said, son, don't do that. Like you're giving in to the shadow side of what's happening to you is coming out. But I had empathy. Like if you're demonizing somebody, do we really think that? Oh, you've made me feel really horrible and guilty about myself for all a long time. I'm just going to join your cause. No, some people will do that because they'll give in. But a lot of people are going to give that the finger and they're going to fight back.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that with people. So we've got to get the balance. How can we take responsibility for what has happened without just transferring the group that we're going to hate, right? And this is a really tricky problem.
It's very complex.
It's very hard. And I applaud people like Greg. I'm mostly on this issue. I feel that I don't have the requisite education or expertise, and I also feel that I'm not the right person to. So I'm trying to really, really listen to people who I think do have the proper place and role to try and wrestle with this and learn from them as best I can.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's always a good idea, I mean, it's nice to think about and talk about, It's like
we should.
It's nice to be able to share that thought and just have it be discussed or heard or whatever,
And I think we should. I think making things topics that we can't discuss, that we need to discuss, is really problematizing things for a lot of people. Their problems don't go away by talking about them as if they don't exist. Right.
Yeah, and you create people that then you get people into fear.
So I know an increasing number of people who I can see that the fires of resentment are building in them.
Yeah,
and it's dangerous. It's like this is like the Weimar Republic, right? The Versailles Treaty will crush the enemy into the dust because they're demons, and you end up breeding a demon that's 10 times worse. So I hope that we can get to a place where we can do that. We can do the kind of thing that you and I are trying to do here, where we can do this, this dialogos conversation, where we wrestle with things, and we do it honestly, and people are allowed to make mistakes without immediately being condemned. Like, people are so afraid to make a mistake. You can't learn if you can't make mistakes. Like, people have to be able to make mistakes and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, oh yeah, maybe that was a racist thing. I didn't know, right? I really honestly didn't know. Can you accept that I didn't know? And then can you help me?
Right.
But if we get to a place where you can't make mistakes, then you can't learn. And it feels in a lot of places people are walking on eggshells and everybody's terrified about making a mistake. And then everything gets this chilly, superficial kind of conversation. And then we can't solve any of these problems.
Well, I think it's kind of where Hollywood has kind of pigeonholed itself with some of its creations these days.
And they're paying the price. I mean, so they're claiming that this is what everybody believes, and then the box office is repeatedly telling them, no, they don't, and they resent it, and they're not listening.
Well, it's almost like they have like they're trying to create Stockholm syndrome with their audiences. Not that they need to be one way or the other, but just that. Can we have some reality? Because what gets to be scary is, as a regular person, you start to question your own fucking reality. You're like, there's no way that I'm insane suddenly,
What we should go back to making great stories that are great myth, that afford people being imaginal, that call them to wisdom and virtue. And then within that, ask them to consider issues of race and gender and economic status, rather than hitting people over the head with condemning messages or very superficial representation, so that people watch this and they say, this is boring, or I'm tired of getting preached at. Like, again, like, and here's like right here, there's a point I want to make. We should be able to criticize the method without automatically being told that we are criticizing the goal. I think this is a goal. Should we reduce racism and racial tension? Should we make things more fair between like the sexes and the genders? Yes. And because I really believe that, I think there are good and bad ways of doing that. And we should be able to work together, and I could be wrong and you could be wrong, and we should be able to criticize the methods. If we actually believed in the goal, if we actually believe in the goal, if we actually believe in helping the people, we should be able to criticize the methods like science does. In order, right? Instead of like, right, I just want to plant my flag.
Right.
And so it's Yes.
And it's gotten to the point now where you can't even raise your hand and ask a question without being lambasted so much in society or online that it gets debilitating to any real conversation. You know?
Yeah. And again, I would say that, I think I can honestly say that, I would say that equally to the left and the right. Let me criticize the methods, and it doesn't mean I'm necessarily criticizing the goal. I agree with the left. Your goals of making the world more compassionate, not making people the victims of fate, the fate of race or the fate of the economic class.
They keep doing that.
Right, keep doing that. But also, I get
they keep doing that over, and it's like, come on, man, we've heard this story a million times.
Well, but
when are people going to start to live a new truth unless you start to tell them a new story?
But that's it. It's like, that should never stop, because that's a perennial thing. Human beings are all, but you have to have the method that doesn't dull people to it. And I also want to say this to the right. You're supposed to be calling people to personal responsibility and virtue. Are your leaders exemplars of virtue and personal responsibility? They don't seem to be, right?
Yeah.
I agree with your goals. Are your methods, like, you know how you convince people to pursue virtue? Be as virtuous as you can. Exemplify it. Be like Socrates. Be like Siddhartha. Be like Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I'm probably pissing everybody off because I'm criticizing both the left and the right.
No, I don't think. Look, I think those are challenges that everybody faces, you know. And when your back's against the wall, or you feel like your back is against the wall, whoever that may be, you're going to retaliate more than you are entertain.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
You know, so I think, and a lot of people are feeling that way. It's interesting how so many groups at the same time can feel that way. That's what's kind of interesting to me.
They can have opposite beliefs and be almost exactly in their behavior. And that is like, as a psychologist and cognitive scientist, that is, I'm sorry, this sounds arrogant. I don't mean it to be, but it's so apparent to me. It's like, you're both acting the exact same way, and both sides will like, oh no, right? They're yelling right now at me, but it's like you're saying opposite. I hear you saying and shouting opposite things, but you seem to be acting in this almost the exact same way, and so that for me that's a sign that that's a sign that we're in trouble. That's a sign that like we don't even have debate. We've lost dialogos. We've even lost debate. We've just got like sort of verbal rugby or something going on. I don't know what right.
Yeah, it is.